of the Board of Zoning Appeals. The BZA members are all volunteers and receive no compensation. We are appointed by the City Commission for staggered 3-year terms. Under state statutes, the BZA hears 3 types of appeals: dimensional or non-use variances, including sign variances. We have 2 appeals tonight, and they both are dimensional. The appellant must show a practical difficulty complying with the dimensional requirements of the ordinance. It requires 4 affirmative votes. We have a board of 7 tonight, and as I said, both cases we have in front of us tonight are dimensional. We also hear use variances and appeals of interpretations or rulings of the building official or other boards regarding any provision of the zoning ordinance. Our procedure is as follows. All comments are to be addressed to myself, the chair. Please wait to be recognized. City staff will make a presentation regarding the appeal and take questions from board members. The appellant is then invited to present their case. Only one person will be allowed to address the board. I can't allow for exceptions if we need an architect or an engineer for specific questions from the board members. Members of the public are then invited to come forward, identify themselves, and provide their comments to the board. If you are joining us from Zoom, you can use the raise hand feature to identify that you would like to comment when it is public comment. If you are recognized, we will unmute you. You can say your name, where you're Zooming from, and then provide us with comments. If you are calling by phone, let me remind myself how that works. I want to say it's star, looking for my cheat sheet here. If you're calling from cell phone, you can hit star 9 on your phone, and that will allow us to see that you are trying to speak, and then again, we can call on you, and you can present your comments to the board. Once the members of the public are invited to come forward, identify themselves, and provide their comments. The hearing is then closed, and motions from the board are entertained and acted upon. In all cases, this is not a popularity contest. Granting or denying a variance is based substantially on the appellant meeting their burden of proof. Secretary, can you please call the roll of the board members?
Eric Morgana.
Here.
Jason Kibitzer. Kevin Hart.
Here.
Richard Lilly.
Here.
John Miller.
Here.
Ron Reddy.
Here.
Carl Kona.
Here.
Donald Rogers.
Here.
So as I said, we have a full board, 7 board members. I will call the roll now for the applicants. Do we have someone here for 284 West Maple?
Yes.
Very good, thank you. And do we have someone here for 298 South Old Woodward?
Yes.
Very good. Are there any additional correspondence that we haven't seen, Mike?
No, there aren't.
Very good. Before you, gentlemen, are the minutes from the last regularly scheduled meeting. Do we have any corrections and/or motions to approve those minutes?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? The minutes are approved. Our first appeal tonight is appeal number 25-16 for 284 West Maple, and the city, Nick, will present.
Great, thanks. Hello again, everybody. Nick Dupuy, Planning Director for the City of Birmingham. This particular case, 284 West Maple, tenant known as J. Jill. It's a clothing store. It's a prospective tenant looking to renovate the space and move in shortly thereafter. The issue at hand is that our ordinances, generally speaking, are designed to encourage active, engaging storefronts, to try to promote an active retail environment, lots of activity, and therefore a good, safe, strong, viable downtown. So the accompanying ordinances, which have been on the books for quite some time now, related to those intimate spaces, those important spaces in a building, are drawn towards that goal. So in this particular case, the one regulation in question is in Article 4, Section 4.90, where it states, paraphrasing a bit, that windows cannot be blocked by the backs of shelving units or other opaque materials. So the petitioner here, due to, as they describe in their hardship letter, as store layout issues, including changing rooms and some built-in fixtures, is requesting relief from that portion of the ordinance in the form of 392 square feet of window film, in other words, an opaque material, that would be applied over both of these windows on Bates Street. I've got a little view here. These two windows in particular. Now, they're a corner lot, so they've got the long storefront on Maple as well. You should know that those windows will be clear and open, and that we've been talking for some time, Jay, Jill, and I, about this project, and I've actually gotten them to work with me on the Maple frontage as well. I'll pull that up really quick so I can show you. I think this is the best image to describe it. So these pink areas here, this pink sort of hashed area is open. Previously, in previous designs, there was several walls here that I discouraged them to place, rather allow for open air, open sight lines. There's a small wall, but very minimal. So they have been working with me, but the sticky points were the two windows here on the south side, on the Bates side. So this dimensional variance, again, 392 square feet of opaque window film over these required window areas. And I'm, as usual, open to questions.
So Nick, what is it that they're putting against these windows that would require it to be opaque versus something that would be translucent or something that maybe would allow natural light to come through, and as people walk by, they could see through it?
Sure, and I'll describe it. I feel I've got a good handle on it, but if you need any more, I'll deflect to the applicant. So this area here where my hand is, it's colored green. It's a little hard on the projector. These are the fitting rooms. Of course, it's important for those spaces not to be open and visible to the public. In this case, though, the way that they're proposing to build it, they would have a wall built over here. So behind this window would be the back of an unfinished wall. So they're just really covering the window to block that unfinished back of wall. In this particular case, and this is a little more probably better described by the applicant, they have a specific fixture system, a built-in fixture system, and based on their store layout, they need to have this product here. They feel they need to have this product here in a specific built-in shelving product system that will, again, have a raw blank wall behind it that they're going to cover with film. So that's what's driving their decision here, is the store layout. They mentioned in their letter, other elements of this, which I'll let them expand upon. You should know that there's been changing areas in this location for previous tenants too. There weren't as many, but as I understand it, this store requires a little bit more. So that's the story behind the why.
So what's the distance? Let's say they wanted to have some built-ins that had a opaque back. If they had them 6 feet from the window and then something decorative on the back side of it, would that be allowed?
Of course, there's a bunch of nuance to be fleshed out, but in this case, in the scenario you're building, I think 6 feet would be plenty of space, especially because a person could walk in that area. That's wide enough in terms of, I think, a habitable space, if you will. It's very similar to the front Maple side here, where this is, you can see this dimension here by my hand is 6'4", so it's a little shy of 6 feet in this area, but considerable nonetheless. And they did provide some of these, if I can get to them real quick, examples from other areas, or excuse me, other stores that they have around. I'm too far, forgive me. So these kinds of things. So we would still encourage, so these are, to use this as an example, these are rather heavy walls. There have been other areas in our city, in the city of Birmingham, with similar conditions, but we encourage more open spaces. Thinking the jeweler at Hamilton Row and Woodward, how they built in a kind of a display shelf, but they're little louvered walls, so you can still see through them. Gazelle Sports with their systems on the windows where they're just sort of rack-based and not built-in based. So there's all sorts of ways that you could make us happy in regards to this section of the ordinance, but.
That was going to be the next question. You could have a rack against the wall that had no back to it. There was a two-sided open rack, like, I want to say Lululemon might have that. And those would be allowed. So you could have something against the window, but you could see through it.
Yeah, at a high level, yes, I would say so.
Very good. Other questions for the city? Please.
So if you go back to the plan,
Sure. The floor plan? Or
yeah,
the overall
I'm
plan?
sorry, yes, the colored floor plan? Yeah, so the yellow area along Maple, that's basically a space for mannequins and things like that, which might have a wall or some portions of a wall behind it, and that's not a problem
That is not a problem.
that we're addressing here.
That is not a problem. This area where my hand is basically the only solid wall.
Was the city presented with other options for instance, the dressing room location?
No, I think that's been the dressing room location goal the entire time that I've been a part of the project.
Okay, so, just in looking at this, and this is probably a question for the owner, I'm looking at the east wall, which is blank. Running along that east wall, lining those dressing rooms up there would seem to be able to accommodate the dressing rooms and not block any of the windows. But that was never explored?
Not that I've been aware of.
Okay.
Any other questions for Nick?
I'm good.
Seeing none? Who is coming up to speak on behalf of your appeal?
You want me to go here, or?
It's up to you where you're comfortable, usually typically over there. Yeah, and if you could just state your name, your address, and then tell us why you believe this variance is justified.
Thank you. My name is David Blair. I'm with Shremshock Architect. We're representing J. Jill on the project and prepared the documents for the project. J. Jill is excited to come back into this area. Haven't been here since I think the closure, I think, of Somerset, the Somerset collection. So looking forward to coming back into this. My first time being in Birmingham. It's lovely down here. Downtown is very nice. So we're from Columbus, Ohio. So our firm.
Did you state your full name and your address?
I'm sorry. Yeah, David Blair.
Yeah, and the address of where your
You want
office
me
is.
the address of the firm? Yeah, 7775 Walton Parkway, Suite 250, Columbus, or New Albany, Ohio.
Very good, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I'll try to answer a couple of questions, but let me give just kind of the basic, the hardships, the scenarios we're dealing with the site. The building is existing, obviously. There are some existing conditions that need to maintain, right? There's a stair. Thank you, Nick. By the way, working with Nick has been great. Represents the city very well from staff. There's an existing stair there which cannot move. There's an elevator immediately above it, which is currently a non-compliant elevator for passengers. I think for years it's been used. People were going to use it anyways. It goes down to the basement. We are taking that elevator out and putting a new elevator in, proposed that can be used by passengers, because all of our stock will be in the basement. So all the stock room is going to be in the basement, so that pushes it down there. We do need up to the up here in this area. You will see we have kind of a manager's office up here. We have bathroom, janitor's closet. There's some existing plumbing out in that corner that rises up through the building, drinking fountain in the back. Those elements, I think we were talking through with building, wanted to keep on that floor. Not having patrons go back into the back of house, down an elevator. We needed them. First of all, it's good for their safety, could be monitored, et cetera. So that rectangle is kind of pretty fixed and utilized that way. This site gives us, because of it's a square, right, to start. We're doing with kind of the rectangular portion and the L. We have typically, JGO uses about 3,000 square foot sales area. This one's giving us about 2,200. So they are kind of consolidating everything as much as they can into that space. So it makes it a little bit smaller for us. It is also obviously on a corner, which is providing more glass space. That can be a benefit, but it also provides less space to provide racking and display, again, and wall display space. So we have been working, again, with Nick with regard to the Maple Street side, which is our primary retail side, right? That is your main retail street, where Bates is really kind of secondary. From that point, it goes down and kind of dead ends of the church, and then move down towards your park, right, the other direction. So we really wanted to focus everything we could for being able to see in the store and the light from the inside of the store and display windows, et cetera, along the Maple Street side. So what we've done, again, in working is pull back from the window walls to allow mannequins, display areas. If you look through some of the pictures you probably have in the packet, you'll see they kind of hang, I'll say, images of models, et cetera, in those spaces. So it provides a good depth. I think Nick pointed out where the wall was up, in that space. So the only part that's really walled is there, and again, that'll have images kind of dropping down. And then from there on, you can see back into the rest of the store. So we've got about 80% of the side of that completely open along that frontage. So I think if we were dealing with a single-sided, inline retail space, we tried to open that up as much as we can. We get obviously to the other side. The fitting rooms are, well, they're there for a couple things. First of all, the rest of the store in the rectangular configuration with the sales, with your sales checkout counter right there, it allows the entire store to be monitored, both for safety, but also for customer service, right? So the only wall really in the store is directly in front of that, perpendicular to Maple. So we have installed, right there, yeah, we've installed that. So now if someone's at the counter, salesperson, they can see both sides of it. It's not blocking anybody really unless you're really tucked in. So everybody's visible in the store. Obviously, which is important, other than obviously the fitting room, and the fitting room is monitored. So there would be a staff person at the fitting room, which again, monitoring the fitting room in that location, so it provides a nice spot for us to tuck that in. So from there, we coming back to, I think, the question that was raised, can you put the fitting room up to the, I'll say plan north, right, up in this area? The problem is we put it along there, we start to block potentially, if it doesn't take along the entire space, you could potentially block views towards the window of sales area. Also, our access points back to the back is really there. It could move down a little bit, but we don't want, again, anybody coming back using the restroom or something, we don't want them coming back down into stair area. So it really works better to move that down to the location we have it, and it allows that location, again, if you had the fitting room above, that location is kind of a blind spot to the sales counter. So now you don't have a spot of the store that's monitored by the employees. So that can become a safety issue. I mean, we are a women's clothing store, as well as, again, get the customer service that's required and you really need for the store. So that's kind of what we're dealing with regard to the store layout. I think you were moving to a question with regard to the lower right-hand space, that there. So moving, we've got some dimensions there. You come in, retail sales is kind of I'm going to say it's somewhere mixed science and accounting. So there's definitely a science to where they're putting things, where merchandisings are, how they do that, where it occurs to drive the sales that they need. We're dealing with a little smaller space. Again, we're dealing with an urban setting, which J.Joe does not do too many of these. I think we probably got a picture of all the ones they have in the in their, in what we provided in a packet. So we're working with their system into kind of this urban setting. And if that wall moves in to the store, you can't move in 6 feet if you walk behind it. First of all, nobody's walking behind the wall up to the north. So again, you couldn't be seen, you'd be blocked, so that won't occur. We wouldn't want people blind walking behind it, so it would be nothing but a display area, and we would lose, there's 2 dimensions on there. You kind of see 3 foot and 3 foot between the circular and then the fixture and then what's along the wall racks. So in looking at it, they're going to lose, it seems small, but they're going to lose in a smaller store that they're already kind of packing merchandise into, too much sales area if that really pushes back. So again, what we've tried to do is accent the Maple Street side, accent that retail side. Bates had those windows blanked off with no opaque film. We're putting a new one on, but it was an existing condition in that way. So that's kind of where we're coming from, why we're doing what we're doing. It is certainly it's a great site. It's important. We like the building. But we got to kind of make it work for them to drive enough sales to do it. And I think kind of the question that goes to the end of that is you know, the purpose of the ordinance, and is it the purpose of the ordinance, is it really not being met by what we're doing? Letter of the law, yes, understand that. But part of the question is substantial justice being done? And I think substantial justice to be done to allow the store to go into this space and blocking the kind of the obvious of the fitting rooms, but then allowing enough fixturing to go in and make it a viable store for JGL. So I'm happy to answer questions.
So I appreciate your presentation. It sounds like the building is smaller than what you typically are used to be able to market enough merchandise and place everything to generate the revenue necessary to justify the space. I hear that you're exploring a corner building that has glass on 2 sides, and that one side doesn't really benefit a layout when the building is undersized for your needs. I haven't seen a version of this layout where you do allow the windows to be exposed and what you'd have to do to make it happen. The challenge for me is that we're not here to question the ordinance. We're here to say, what is your practical difficulty? And it sounds like your difficulty is, we're used to marketing in a particular way. We're used to having a particular sight lines for salespeople and managers and security to see people that are in, not only to protect them, but to protect the merchandise and protect, you know, the overall business. And this space doesn't really allow for that. For us, you know, Birmingham is a walkable city. We love the opportunity to have this business here, but we don't want people to walk along buildings with gorgeous big open windows and see blank walls or see obstruction to those windows. And that makes a certain challenge for those corner buildings, but I guess the business has to be able to accommodate for that. So I'm not sure I heard, you know, another option where you could try to make it work, and because of the space being undersized based on the space you're used to using to be able to display everything you need to display, you don't have enough wall space. Now, what about the question of some of the racks against the window that are in that light purple? Why couldn't those racks be 2-sided, so open on both sides? I assume these are hanging clothes or shoes so that you could see them through the window.
So the racking system they use is a it's a wall-mounted racking system, right? There are some open rack things down here, but they merchandise different product.
Right.
You've been in mall stores. JGL's been a, you know, mall. A lot of these stores are kind of, now that a number of malls are closing and saying, and it's a change, right? They're kind of moving out of that somewhat. And part of what I was mentioning was, hey, you know, if this was a mall store, it's not. I don't want to insult the area by saying, but it's true. you would have a long linear store, right? We would have a storefront that's narrow in the front, and we'd have a lot more wall space.
And not a lot of corner units.
Right, and it uses the units that they have to manufacture, to merchandise certain elements of it.
Right.
Certain clothes are merchandising certain elements, and certain clothes are merchandising other elements. I don't want you to think we've come and not studied a number of different options here. Between us working with J. Jill and their planners and ourselves and the store, we've been at it for
6 months.
6 months, right, yeah. So, and a lot of that, we're dealing with downstairs, and we're dealing with the elevator and other things. So, yeah, we have looked at a number of options, because we've been working with Nick for a while and kind of understood the ordinance fairly early on, and what were the options for them, so.
Yeah, I just see a lot of national retailers around the country adapting their typical product or their signage or the way they display. They adapt to the environment for which they're going to move into. Either you find a space that is large enough, that's linear enough, or you adapt because you want to be in that environment. And the question is, do we as a city adapt and say, let's have a bunch of windows that people are walking? I mean, if you're in the city over the weekend, you see that the sidewalks are packed, the merchandise will sell, but we don't want people walking by windows that are covered. And so, and again, we're just here to talk about the ordinance, not to change the ordinance. So that's a challenge for me.
Yeah.
Other questions?
And they wouldn't go in here if they didn't think the way they're merchandising this was going to sell it, right? You know what I mean? So typically, they have less storefront than we're providing, right? So now we're working with the bigger one. We know it'll work for them in this layout. That'll work. It'll work for the city. You'll have a national retailer that's, understands how it works and everything. So they do, again, that's
Yeah,
part
let me
of it,
see
right?
other
We know
questions
what works,
from the
right?
board.
Yeah.
Please. Mr. Redmond.
So, excuse me, I might have missed this, but could you please explain, I get the dressing room piece, that I understand, but the southern window, the one with the Rex, why can't you just kind of mitigate the ask by not having the film on that particular window?
They're wall mounted, so
No,
that's a
I
wall
get
mounted.
it, I get it, but
Okay,
this is,
right. Right.
I'm looking for some room here to compromise, I mean.
No, I understand
Heard
you
the
are.
question from the chair.
Yeah. And now if we had put, I'm going to point, just so you. Is that live?
Yes.
It is.
What we've done up here is kind of a traditional, provides them allowed to use the wall racking against a wall, right, and still have the visualization for it. So even if you turn the wall racking here, you can't create a blind spot over here for someone to be. You lose merchandise, you have problems that way, right? You can't do that. I mean, it's just not going to work. It's an easy way to walk out of here. So it's easy for us to go, hey, can we put this here, put this here? They don't have, there's not a, J. Jill's a brand, right? When you walk into a store, there's a brand. So there's not custom fixtures other than using what they have that go, oh, well, this is open. It's not. It's a wall-mounted fixture. This is a wall-mounted fixture with display. This is a wall-mounted fixture with display. This has lights over it. So it markets to the manufacturers of those clothes that are in that space the way that they understand it to be done. Right?
Very good. Other questions, Mr. Lilly?
I guess I don't have a problem with the film by the dressing rooms. I mean, we accommodated Lululemon with basically the same situation.
Yeah, but Lululemon did not have bookcases backing to it. They had a film that was obscured or something, so you couldn't see into it.
Well, but part of the film at Lululemon is at their dressing rooms. So I don't have a problem with that. But I guess if push gets to shove, are you saying that there's no way you could get a fixture built to leave that window open in the blue zone?
I'm going to tell you, they're not going to get a fixture done to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's the perfectly logical question. I knew what was coming in and what the question would be. The fitting room blocking is obvious. I think a number of the points are pretty obvious. But
Sorry, we have a long night. Your answer was no, that's all we.
That's fine. I appreciate it. It's
Thank you.
okay.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I have several questions. So of the other stores that you deal with all the stores?
Our firm deals with a number of the stores.
Okay, so are there other stores of similar size that you've dealt with?
No, like I kind of tried to mention, there are, almost all of their stores, have been a mall retailer, right? So there are very few what I'll call specialized urban stores. I think there's a picture of literally all of them in the packet. So there's,
No, I understand, but
I don't want to speak wrong, there's very minimal, like probably less than 5% of their entire collection of stores, which is 300 plus.
sure. But are there any similar to this size, 2,000 square feet?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
And I could be wrong. There is,
Sir,
if you want to ask.
He said not that you're aware of. He's got to get all of his questions out.
Oh, okay.
Please.
Okay.
So I appreciate you showing the stores that I guess are urban environments, but the format that I've seen is very typical. Like you said, there's a standard fixture, table, certain types of things set out in most of the stores, but it's not standard across every store. Like I just went and looked, I found a half a dozen in just a minute looking at images, and like Bend, Oregon stood out to me. It's like all glass on the front, quite a wide storefront to it. It seems like it has different fixtures, and I don't know if it's just a newer update than other stores do, but it's definitely different from all the other cookie cut stores that all seem to have the same kind of format that you walk into. So that tells me there is, some viability to change the standard layout to look something different for that particular storefront. You showed the Third Avenue store, and when I looked at the Third Avenue store inside, they took advantage of the columns in the store, and they built, to me, custom fixtures that made more wall space around the support columns in the middle of the store. So my question is, why are these stores able to do these things, but you can't do them at this store?
You are correct. The stores don't all look the same, but part of that is because every year or two, they're working on new fixturing, right? New ways of displaying. So you have a variety.
Exactly.
So I'm not saying that's every case, but yeah, you go back and look at one, it's like, why does it look different? I don't see that fixture in this one. It's because they're working on, always working on some new ways to fixture the brand, et cetera, colors, et cetera. So that's part of it. I'm going to address the one I wrote down as essentially the stores look different, and every design of every store is different, but you're generally trying to use a kit of parts of what you have to get there, right? You're using a kit of parts of display walls, of the racks, of the tables, of the specialty seating, et cetera, that you move around to get you to, you move around the space based on its elements of it to get you to a design that is a J. Jill brand, and fits those same elements in it, but obviously has some uniqueness to it for the space.
Okay.
So I can just describe them as being parts or elements of a kit of parts that they have available.
Okay. So when you talk about these wall fixtures, the WB1, they're basically clothes on either side, and then there's typically a mannequin in the middle, or sometimes there's clothes in the middle. So it's either just a line of clothes, or it's either clothes, and then mannequins in the middle.
Right, I'll say, yeah, clothes on shelves, right, with access below for extras to B1.
All the ones I've seen have all had like mannequins in the middle and clothes on either side. Once in a while, I saw one with just clothes all across from end to end.
Right.
My point is, if you look at your BBLs, you've got two of them right off center. They would take up just as much clothes space and wouldn't be a wall fixture. I'm looking at this, and it looks like, you look at your Third Avenue store, it's much more compact and dense as far as fixtures and space inside the store. And here you've got, to me, it looks like a generous amount of space, and you're closing off window space, which is, prime. And
It's prime, it's more prime for them to have wall space.
Right,
than
exactly.
window space, right?
Right.
So even if you put those fixtures there, it's more prime for them to have the wall space than the window space.
So I want to interject for a second. So we aren't here to solve how they could use this space better. We're here to determine if we're okay with them covering these windows. So I think what you're proposing is if you choose to vote against this appeal, that you believe there are other options, but we aren't here to solve a better option.
I wasn't trying to sell it, I was just trying to find out why they had to have wall fixtures if the issue was there's not enough clothing on the floor. Why do you have to have wall fixtures versus just the floor fixtures? That was my question.
I'm hearing them say that they're used to a space that's mostly wall and minimal windows in a mall scenario, so they've designed all of the displays consistently to mount against walls because they have mostly drywall and fewer windows, and so now they're trying to adapt that. But I think what you've pointed out is you've seen some modulation of these tools that they're provided, and is it possible, because again, we're just here to say, is it okay to cover up the windows? Are we going to give a variance because we believe that you have a difficulty using the space the way it's intended to be used? That's really what we're here to determine. So keep going with your question.
No, that was it.
Okay. Mr. Miller.
Yeah, I guess my concern is that, my understanding is that you've never presented the city with an alternate plan that would still use, all of your, to maintain your kit of parts. Because as I look at this plan, if we can shrink it down a little bit so we can see the whole plan, you can take that program you have for the dressing rooms in green, line it up against the east wall, which is blank, and with the same sizes of rooms and same size of programs, it can easily sit in that location without blocking any windows. It won't block that door to the, where the elevator is, that hallway door can still remain where it is, and you can fit that whole program in that sort of, along that eastern wall. In doing that,
Let me just ask, so I know you're not looking at that one. All right, let me go to this one, sir. I wanted to just be sure what you're asking. You're talking about up in this corner?
along that top wall, right where the hand is. Yeah, right along there, you line up your dressing rooms and the hall to access them, and they're on a blank wall. When you do that, you free up the green area, which is the dressing room now, which has two blank walls, and you could locate that piece that's covering the other window on one of those two blank walls.
You could, but you missed my point about security and about customer service, right? So you need to be able to, the person at the, sorry for you, the person at this location, which is the cash wrap, cannot be blocked from people over here in the store. Whose product, right, from shoplifting, you have no access to them visually all the time for safety, as well as you don't have a customer service person that can always visualize the
Unless
store.
your customer service counter was against the blank wall in between the two windows in question, then you could see the entire store. Anyway, I don't want to get into redesigning the space, but if you haven't presented a plan, it's hard for at least me to understand why there couldn't have been an alternate, because it seems that there's probably an alternate in there that would work and save those windows.
Let me ask, you said we haven't presented a plan. Have we presented any other plans to you?
Most of what I've seen involves the maple frontage, the changes that would be.
The intent isn't here to ask us questions, but I hear your
Oh,
point.
I'm sorry, I just wanted factually just to know.
Yeah, I'm
Because
sure.
we can't come here every month and present
Yeah.
a new plan to the entire board, so we try to work through it.
Yeah,
That's all I was asking.
I get it. You have a-
I'm not,
Yeah, I hear you.
got me.
You have a
Okay.
directive on how you're supposed to design this space, and this space is challenging for that because you don't want nooks and crannies. It doesn't make sense for your directive, and you're limited by the fixtures you can put in, and so you're doing the best space you can. I think we want to see a space that allows for the windows to work. Like in my mind, and again, I'm not here to design it, but if you pulled that wall that's back into the dressing room back and had some clothes on display or some of the visual stuff and had a gap where the window was open but could see that, but you're also blocking the dressing room, I could justify that. Like I want to see a version where the glass is clear, but something maybe is buffering what you need to accomplish. So that's what I would want to see, to feel comfortable that you're doing your best. I get your limitations to try to accommodate our ordinance. you have any other questions?
Yeah, well,
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr.
Yeah,
Wong,
just
please.
one follow.
Please.
My first question to the city earlier was, were alternate plans presented? And the answer was no. So, go ahead.
Please.
Mr. Chairman. David, in my mind, this is, and maybe Nick could answer this question, but this building is an Albert Kahn building. It was built in the 20s. It's probably one of the most iconic buildings in the city of Birmingham. It's a beautiful building, in my opinion, and a lot of people would probably agree. So I think that you can accomplish everything that you have that you're asking for. I've done some retail design myself, and I know there are gondolas that can be placed in front of a window. Like I know you have to obscure the northwest corner, but the southwest corner to me would also, I would think that that's a very important fenestration on that building, allowing light in that faces west. And that's a 9-foot high mullion at the top of that before you get to the arc, which is probably close to 12 feet high. That obscuring that window, I think you would be able to accomplish it with a gondola that's a little bit more transparent, that has hanging bars and drawers and everything else in it, and get everything else that you want. The other one that's a little further towards the north, I totally understand why those windows need to be obscured. And I think it's, obviously you've spent a lot of time on the layout, but I just can't imagine there's not some way to put a semi-transparent storage unit or display unit in front of that window. It would still let a lot of light in and vision and everything else. And also coming up Maple as you're going east on Maple, that's a huge corner right there. That corner that you see in this image is probably the image of this building. That is probably the most important image of the building, is that southwest corner. Light at the end of the day, the sun's going across the sky to the south. It sets in the west, afternoon sun. I think everything you have done here is very well done. I just think there might be some custom cabinet or custom gondola that could be assembled that could accomplish it.
Yeah, and I hear you. I can tell you that sets the store back a year, and it will happen.
A year, really? Okay.
Because now it's got to go through approvals of CEO
Sure.
on down.
Well,
right? And they're just not going to. And that sounds like I'm forcing something on all you guys, and I don't want to come and try to do that. But I don't think it'll happen without the variance. And that's because it pushes it back a year in their store planning, right? Now they're trying to, we can get the store, it looks like it's probably going to be
What does the back of that hanging unit look like? I mean, you said it's a wall mount.
It's
You're
just
gonna
a
hang it on the
wall. That's a
mullions?
wall.
Oh,
That's a wall. Now
I know,
what?
but how do you hang it? You can't hang it on the mullions. Are you going to pull the mullions and the mutton, or the framing?
No, we're building a wall.
Okay,
We're building a wall there.
so it's going to be spandrel glass on the outside.
I'll call it, there's a variety of different ways to hang it, but I'll call it a slab wall type thing, right?
Okay.
What's in my head. So this has the built-in hangers in the specialty stud wall for it, right, along that way. Which literally those hang off of, those work off of, so that's the case.
So there's there's no opaque film on there. The film is making that glass into a spandrel glass, right?
We were putting the film here.
Yes.
I can't tell you it's impossible to not do that.
Yeah,
Although we don't want to get dirty, you've seen that. So
Yeah.
then no one cleans it for 2 years and it's nothing but flies or whatever in it, even when Max doesn't handle it. It could be an option, maybe you write into a condition.
Yeah, it would be helpful to know what
consider.
that fixture looks like. Like when you're looking, the elevation looking towards the west, it would help to know how tall that fixture, do you have that, Nick? I'm sorry, that would be.
I guess if I could be frank, it wouldn't matter. You're still blocking the window with the back of a shelf in this case.
Yeah, I get that, but a film on the glass, really, that,
I think he's saying, I could see myself of approving a variance if I understood how it's going to look. But again, I think we're going off on a tangent. We have.
well, but, you know, I think this is a remarkably well-done plan. I just think that there's.
It's not for a corner,
I
not for a corner
I need
unit.
to understand why that can't happen, because it just seems like a logical solution.
And they're saying
I mean,
that
you're getting everything you want here.
They're saying
But there's just a fixture.
They're saying there's an inflexibility in their ability to customize, and we have to accept that.
Well, we encountered it when we did some of the stores that came.
Yeah.
You know,
They just have more flexibility than this retailer has, which I get, you know. They have a modular way of being successful. Any other questions for the appellant? Seeing none, sir, thank you for putting up with all of our questions.
Thank you all. No,
Yeah.
no, appreciate it.
In the audience, anyone not affiliated with this particular appeal that has any comments about this particular appeal? Ma'am, because you're affiliated with it, you can't comment on it, no.
Can I make any comments?
You
about it?
cannot, no. The goal would have been to provide him with anything you wanted to say. It can only be
Oh,
one person.
I'm just the broker on the deal, and I have all the inside track of.
It's irrelevant to us. I'm sorry. It's,
But, I mean, but I think there's some very relevant things that this board needs to know.
then it should have been in the packet that was presented to us.
Well, I'm the broker, so, I mean, I thought I would have the opportunity to.
You do not. One person can present.
I've been marketing this site for 18 months. I have shown.
Ma'am,
8 to 9.
I can't say it again. You can't present from the seat. Only one person can present, and your perspective on the challenges of marketing this particular site, or whether it moves, or how many opportunities you've had of different retailers, or why this is the best use, isn't relevant to the ordinance.
Well, it's an apparel use, and in the.
Again, you're
other
trying to
LOIs
testify.
we
You
have-
can't testify in front of this board from your position. Only one person can represent. I'm sorry, this is just the way this process works.
I just think there's valuable information. If the city wants.
If you had
apparel-
valuable information, it should have been presented in the package to the board so we could consider it.
But I thought that the comments were able to be made.
Only for the public that is not affiliated with the case, because you're testifying twice.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
would our board consider having those things added to it if we were to table this subject and talk about it next month, or would that?
I mean, I think we've gone too far. What he's suggesting, if you want to pull and I'm not saying that we want to do this, if you wanted to pull this particular appeal to then present it again a month from now, to do this same process again and provide in the packet more information, you could do that. But we can't consider the real estate value, the real estate risk. I'm sorry, this isn't a debate. We can't consider those things in our decision.
Question, when you say affiliated, this is the architect on the job. They are directly related to J. Jill. I'm not. I'm an outside company.
Again, only one person can come up and say, we have an appeal. It could be an attorney, it could be an architect, which is usually the best person to do it. It could be the owner of the company, it could be the marketing director, it could be the broker. You choose. In this case, one was chosen, and if you listen when I started the presentation, I said only one person may speak on behalf of this appeal. You're trying to speak on behalf of this appeal. That is not allowed in our process.
But I'm not involved with them. I'm a separate company. So I thought I would be part of the public.
Right,
and
I'm
was
explaining
able
to you that you are not, and I apologize, but that's just how our process works.
It's valuable information, though, that I think this committee really needs to know, because.
I appreciate that.
The city wants
Again,
apparel.
ma'am, you can either leave the room if you can't listen to the rule, or you can stay and listen to the final decision, but we don't have the ability to have multiple people present on a case. I've never had well, that's not true. A real estate,
It's not a present, it's just comments.
okay, but commenting on behalf of the appeal is speaking on behalf of it in your attempt to get the appeal to be approved. We don't allow for that. These are not my rules. These are the parliamentary rules of how this works.
I just want to state facts, that's all.
I appreciate everyone believes what they're stating are facts, but the real estate broker representation of what is happening on this property is not relevant to the ordinance that the city wants all the windows to have exposure.
It's relevant.
It is not relevant to this particular appeal.
Absolutely it
Not to
is.
us, it
You need
isn't.
to know why this tenant is important to the city of Birmingham.
Every tenant is important to the city of Birmingham. They just have to find the
This is
space.
not a restaurant. This is an apparel store, and apparel stores are very difficult to find, and this is a tenant.
So you're just gonna continue to testify when we aren't-
No, I'm just saying, this is a national tenant that came from Somerset.
And we love them in our
It's
city. They just have to
very
follow our ordinances, just like Whole Foods did, just like Lululemon does, just like Restoration Hardware does.
Didn't. They got an appeal.
They got a
Having
variance
stores
under a
closed.
particular circumstance, under a specific location. I hear you. Listen, many of us are in the real estate business. I get the point where you're coming from. It just isn't relevant to the ordinance. We would love them in our community. That's not relevant to the ordinance. We don't make those decisions. It's not a popularity contest. It's about whether or not they met their burden. But I appreciate that. Is there any other comments from anyone online or in the audience? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Board members. Please, Mr. Miller.
I'm going to move to deny Appeal 2516, and it's kind of based on, having a corner store location in downtown Birmingham. It's just hard for me to understand why that's a hardship. If you look at Bates Street, which is the street that we're concerned of where these windows are, and start to the south, there's Shane Park. You cross the street and you have Tallulah, which is a restaurant, all glass. Next, you have the current furniture store, which used to be Linda Dresner, a woman's apparel store, which is all glass. You cross Maple as you go to the north. You have our Wabeek building here with its two portions of glass with the masonry piece in between. And as you go further to the north and kind of curve around the Willets, you have Slice and Sidecar restaurants, all glass there. So for two continuous blocks, this is all glass along our, in our downtown area, which zoning has dictated and maintained, and all of these different restaurants, clothing shops, and furniture stores have been able to comply with. Also, not looking at another viable option is a concern to me, because I think there is another option here that could work. Again, using your maintaining the kit of parts and still maintaining those both of those windows. And since I don't believe there's any really special conditions here applicable to this property, that it should be able to be used for its permitted use without blocking those windows. I believe that the literal enforcement of the chapter will result in no unnecessary hardship, and granting the variance would be contrary to the spirit and the purpose of the zoning, in particular to doing substantial justice to the other venues along the street and in our downtown. And for those reasons, I would move to deny.
We have a motion to deny. We have a second from Mr. Kona. Any discussion? I'll support the motion. I appreciate the method by which the architect presented how they're approaching this, the limitations they have from their corporate office, and the modular ways in which they have to approach displaying. I also appreciate that they have other considerations like theft and great customer service and the amount of materials they need to display in order to be profitable, to justify the space and the rent and the marketing and everything that's involved. It sounds like this space is not the appropriate space for this retailer for that reason, because we want to maintain a walkable community with windows. I believe that's the intent of the ordinance, and to take that prominent wall as you drive in or out of the community, and you see this as you walk from some of the restaurants around to that main thoroughfare. We don't want people walking by opaque windows. So for that reason, I would support the motion. We have a motion to deny. Can we please call the roll?
John Miller,
Yes.
Carl Kona,
Yes.
Donald Rogers,
Yes.
Kevin Hart,
Yes.
Richard Lilly,
Yes?
Eric Overmuth,
Yes.
Ron Ready.
Yes.
Sorry, your variance was denied, but we would love for you to find a way to be in our community. Sorry, this space doesn't work out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next case is case number 25-17 for 298 South Old Woodward.
All right, thanks. Yes, 298 South Old Woodward, otherwise known as the Daxton Hotel. It's been operating in town, I think it got its C of O in 2021 sometime. Of course, it was in entitlements for a long time before that. And the reason I mention that is during those entitlements, the site plan reviews, all the things that are required at the planning board and at a certain point the city commission. Their existing design located a loading area in this, I guess what's that? Forgive me, the southwest corner of the building off of Brown Street, meeting the minimum requirements of 12 by 40 by 14. That's 12 feet wide, 40 feet long, and 14 feet high, which is ordinance here in the city of Birmingham. Back in the early stages of a building like this, of this size, we review everything top to bottom, including, but not limited to, where you're going to put your trash. So in the original approvals, they located their trash in this area of the building, which is still at the southwest corner, just inside that loading area, up a few set of stairs and through some doors. Through the operation of their hotel over the course of several years, they've, I guess, run into an issue with laundry, as they say in their letters, and they are attempting to shift to on-site laundry. Where they're proposing to locate their on-site laundry is in the existing trash rooms that were on the approved site plan. That trash, to be open, it has already shifted to the loading area, and it's in the form of what seems to be like 2,000 roll-off bins, quite a few of them, which get picked up, again, from their letter several times a week. So because of that transition, we required them to come back for site plan review because it's a big enough change. It required a variance, and that the need for a variance necessitates that they go to site plan review. So they did go to site plan review. The planning board did move to approve this proposal with a couple of conditions, one that they come here and petition for a variance. The variance being a dimensional one of simply one usable off-street loading space. The compactor that they were going to put in this space will effectively eliminate it. It'll be placed towards the Brown Street entrance, towards this overhead garage door. There would not be access but for maybe a human or two that can walk back behind here. What they're proposing and what they explained at the planning board is that would significantly reduce their loading and unloading needs, which I'll let them explain more, and that they would shift much of the loading and unloading functions that they require as a business to the lower level, which does have access in that same area. That's all I really have in terms of presentation. Of course, the applicant's here to add any color, should you need it.
Very good. Questions for Nick, please?
So, Nick, you mentioned about the laundry area needing to be moved and the trash cans that were in that back inside area they're now outside, or they're going to do, that's what they plan to do? I didn't understand what you...
Oh, sure. And so maybe I should rephrase, if I may, a little bit. There is no on-site laundry today. They do all of their laundry off-site and get many deliveries due to that. They like to bring that service in-house within their building, the location of which would be the former trash room. So if there was anything in that trash room, which I don't believe there was, this would effectively eliminate those rooms to ever be used for trash again, which was on their approved site plans. If you've walked by, it's obvious that they've been putting the trash in the loading area for some time. It's not necessarily violating any ordinances. They can use that loading area for purposes such as that, but it appears to have been moved for some time.
So where do they get deliveries if the loading dock isn't being used?
Sure. I suppose I'll let the applicant explain a lot. I could tell you what I've seen, but I think that would probably be inappropriate.
Well, I mean, if it's required by the code to have an off-site loading area, I didn't know if they had to present to you, this is what our alternative is. I didn't see anything for
Oh.
alternative. and let's say that you can take the load or the deliveries downstairs, that looks like a car area. I don't know if large trucks could maneuver in that area to make deliveries.
Understood.
From my personal observation, I've seen loading trucks in front of the hotel in the middle lane blocking traffic and causing havoc. So I don't know how the planning department gets involved with that or what is at stake at that spot being required.
Sure. So there's sort of a bunch of things in that one comment/question. What I would suggest to you is that, just to be clear, they're not proposing to relocate a loading space. They're just proposing to shift the loading functions down below. The area down below, I don't believe they'd have the area required to be considered a loading space. So for that reason, they're not formally requesting to shift it, rather to eliminate it. Understanding, though, that they would send what they have called vans down there. Bigger vans, but vans nonetheless. And certainly loading functions do happen on Woodward. That happens up and down, Old Woodward. So I've seen that as well.
One last question. So the proposal was to put the trash compactor in that space and eliminate that. Was there any other proposal to provide interior space, like take away from a ballroom or something to provide space for this?
No, we talked about it a little bit, but it seemed like this was the preferred option.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Miller-Hart, did you have a question?
I think Mr.
I saw another hand when Carl lifted his
Yeah,
hand. Go ahead.
For Nick, I just want to, is currently, I'm pretty sure I already know the answer to the question that I'm going to ask, so I'm trying not to make it a statement. Is the center lane of Old Woodward, is that intended to be a left turn lane, or is that intended to be stacking delivery truck vehicles? Or?
Sure. I've been told that middle lane of South Old Woodward, as a part of the three-phase reconstruction project, was designed to accommodate loading and unloading functions.
Okay, good, thank you.
Mr. Reddy.
Nick, can you show me where they're talking about the lower level? Because my concern parallels Mr. Kona's. That is a busy intersection. Woodward and Brown there is always a mess. And, the fact that they're not using a loading dock is an issue. So I'd like to see what they're thinking about with regards to where they're talking about underneath to use that as a makeshift loading dock.
Sure. So I don't have a lower level floor plan, but I can kind of take you through it. So this is the loading area. Just west of that is the entrance to the lower level parking garage.
It's a garage door there.
There's a small garage.
Yeah.
Oh, I have this door here.
Yeah.
So it'd be entering and exiting in the same exact area, a few feet proud of what's existing as a loading area. That's where they're saying they would send their van deliveries down to the lower level, which is a standard lower level parking facility, if you can imagine it. Their service elevator accesses that level.
So clearly that's not a full-size, would not handle any full-size type delivery van. Is that your impression?
Absolutely correct, yes.
Okay. All right, very good. Thank you.
Mr. Reddy, Mr. Lilly, did I see you had a question or no?
No.
Mr. Ryder?
Yeah, I happen to be the builder of the Daxton, so
Okay.
I'm very familiar with the conditions going down there. And I have the same concern that there isn't sufficient clearance for any large vehicle to go down to the lower level, unload, bring materials up to the kitchen on the first level. So, yeah, eliminating the current loading dock, yeah, that's a concern.
Nick, can you comment, so if anybody wanted to build a hotel or any structure similar to this, a loading dock is required, correct? At least one? And what's the criteria for that requirement?
Yeah, and so I can look it up to be sure, but my recollection of the ordinance is there's certain thresholds. So, for example, a 0 to 5,000 square foot office or commercial space doesn't actually require any loading. If you're between 5 and 25,000, you require one, and it scales up.
Very good.
So because the commercial space, which is defined in our ordinance, or what commercial space is between 5 and 25, they were required to have just the one.
And the Daxton could not have been built without that loading dock or a variance?
That's correct.
Very good. Mr. Lilly?
Okay, so my question is, yeah, it's a loading dock, that open bay, but you can't get a truck in there, like a semi-trailer truck. So it almost becomes a moot point for a loading dock if you can't get a truck in there, because the turning radius is like non-existent for a bigger truck, even a city trailer. So, because I looked at this and I thought, well, it's a,
Mr. Lilly, are you asking a question or are you making a statement?
I'm done.
Very good, sir, thank you. Are you testifying or are you?
Well,
I hear you. I appreciate your statement. Any other questions for the city? Seeing none, who's coming to speak on behalf of this appeal? Just a reminder, name and address if you could.
My name is Robert Carmack. Our address is with Superior Hospitality Group. We manage the Daxton. Our address is 390 Park Street, Birmingham, Michigan.
Thank you.
So like Nick said, where this all started is we right now have off-site laundry. It requires 2 to 3 deliveries a day, Monday through Saturday, which they unload in the center of one of you stated, in Old Woodward, which is not very safe, it's not very workable, it creates a lot of incidences. So we went to the building department to use the existing trash room as a new on-site laundry facility. When we submitted this, Nick brought up, said, hey, look, 2 or 3 things arise. One, the trash room that you're proposing to remove is now moving into the loading dock, like as he has stated. There's 70 trash cans that have been from the lower level to that loading dock that are they come and pick up Monday through Saturday every day and do it by hand at about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. So our proposal is to take the loading dock area, put a trash compactor in there, which now would happen Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Then we could have the space to have our on-site laundry room and alleviate all that deliveries. And now we're doing the trash from 6 days a week down to 3 days a week. And then what we're doing right now for all of our deliveries, like Cisco and whatnot, they are delivered in vans through the lower level, down to the service elevator and brought up that way. Yes, if they're large trucks, they cannot, but long as they're under 8 feet, they come into that loading area presently, into the lower level.
So I guess my first question is, so this van that was delivering laundry, or, I guess clean laundry and taking laundry away, that was parking on Old Woodward, would that van fit in your loading dock if you didn't have 70 trash cans in there? Or what? I mean, I've driven by, I see you.
No, it won't, because, well, one of the reasons, it's very difficult, like one of the gentlemen said, is the turning radius. The number one difficulty right now is the building that's under construction to the west of us, I believe. They took away the center lane, so it's nearly impossible to get anything in there right now, let alone, you'll see all the scar marks that are on the loading area, dock area. And one of the things that we would do if this was approved was we'd replace all that granite and got all the beautiful past scar marks on it. So
That's what I was going to ask you. Is this a temporary issue because of the RH building and all the zero kind of edge construction? You don't have that radius.
no, we don't.
And that's, ideally a temporary issue.
Correct. I agree.
What about other areas? So I haven't seen, is there some kind of presentation on where else this trash and or laundry could go on the first floor in the lower level so that you wouldn't have to use the loading dock? Because you're moving the trash to the loading dock because you need the laundry at the trash. Where else in this, however many tens of thousands of square foot building, could you put that laundry service?
It's one of we approached several of those options you just said, but the reason why we like it, it's like this picture that's up, it's got the 1-story roof, right? So there we have all of our venting for all of our dryers and whatnot. That's why this area is prime area for this. Every other area has got floor space above it, so it's not very ideal.
Is this laundry issue also a cost-saving issue in terms of it's much more economical to launder on-site than pay someone to come and go?
Yeah, long-term, because with doing our off-site laundry, we're losing a lot of our linen. It's being misplaced with other people's linen and whatnot, so yes. To answer your question, yes.
And what do you say as a board when we say everybody that wants to be in this city with a building of your size has to have a loading dock? And if we allow you to not have a loading dock that you needed to get approved, then everyone else is going to say, what made the Daxton so special? We should be able to have no loading dock also.
Well, this minimum loading dock here, it doesn't work. It's never been used. I shouldn't say never, it's very rarely been used.
It can't be used with 70 garbage cans in the way, because
Well,
I
no,
can
but-
hardly walk in there to look to see what the limitations were.
Right, so what they do now is they literally cart those trash cans out. We actually even tried doing some roll-off dumpsters in that area, and it's impossible.
Because of the pitch, or why?
Yeah, because of the pitch, and during the wintertime, it's unsafe. They got to try to roll it down the ice or whatever, you know, it's very, now they're taking those 70 trash cans and walking them out to the street and dumping them in the back of a trash can.
Are you a new management company to manage the Daxton, or after the branding, I don't want to say the branding change, for lack of a better description?
No, we've been there since, that we're one of the reasons why we got the new branding of the, yes.
Okay, very good. Please.
So let me ask you, sir, and obviously, this is probably where the planning commission came in, but with regards to this trash compactor, I mean, technically, you take the trash compactor out, the loading dock's still there, is that right? Or are you structurally changing the loading bay in order to have the foundation necessary to support this machine? Could you talk about that a little bit, please?
No, none of that is, so if we were to say no, right, so now we would still have to have the trash cans in the loading area, but we could still do our back-of-house laundry, yes.
Well, I guess what maybe I didn't state it clearly. My question is, the fact of the matter is, say that the variance is approved, you put the trash compactor in there, if the trash compactor comes out, it's still a loading dock, is that right?
Yes,
Okay, that answers the question, thank you.
sorry.
So you're really not getting
Mr.
rid
Lilly?
of the track.
Did you want to make a comment? Please, go ahead. There's other people waiting, and you just started asking a question.
Sorry.
That's all right.
So really, you're not making the loading dock go away?
No, we're not, no. The only thing we'd be doing is adding a trash compactor into the loading dock to make it unusable for a loading dock. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Yes,
Please, Mr.
Mr.
Howard.
Chairman. Yeah, this, I guess I'm trying to look at this as a unique circumstance to the operations of the Daxton. Would there ever be anything that would come there in a 40-foot trailer, semi, any deliveries that you would expect for, for linens, or not even linens, but any other product that might need support?
Nothing that I can think of. Like right now, we have all, like I said, Cisco's coming in just a regular sized van, which is more cost to us, right? So the only thing that's in a large truck per se is the off-site laundry because of the weight of the laundry. And trying to minimize the
You feel
amount of deliveries.
like, I know you probably studied this very tightly, but the amount of, the amount of traffic that we're going to be, this is a significant reduction of traffic to support this building, right? And this is a unique hotel, but you're thinking that this modification would also help reduce significantly the amount of traffic that's in and out of this building?
Oh, yes, sir. It's going to cut away the delivery of the laundry right off the bat. Once our laundry, back-of-house laundry is up and running, you don't have those deliveries anymore of the off-site laundry. That eliminates that. If the trash compactor is allowed, we go from 6 days down to 3 days.
Right. And the trash compactor would be into one large load that would come out?
Correct.
It wouldn't be 6 guys trying to hump
No.
garbage cans up a
And,
ramp? Yeah.
and with that being said, our proposal is they'll come about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning to take that trash compactor out of there when there's less traffic and whatnot in the area.
Thank you.
No, Mr. You had a question first.
Just point of clarification. So currently, all food stocks and for the kitchen and whatnot is being delivered through the loading dock or down the ramp?
Down the ramp, sir.
So that's not changing.
No.
So this is strictly for trash, basically. You've been
Correct.
using it as a trash point of pickup. Okay. That's
Good.
all.
Mr. Fano.
Just for clarification, I thought I heard two different answers to the same question. Your current laundry delivery is done downstairs?
No, and I'm sorry if I said that, sir. So our current delivery of laundry is offloaded in South Old Woodward in the center lane and brought into the building in rolled bins, and they bring it into the building that way presently.
Okay. Okay, and so then the garbage delivery is done at 3 or 4 in the morning, so you're really not impacting traffic,
No, sir.
so to speak. So if you do it 3 times or 6 times, that's not really affect. The biggest thing here is the laundry deliveries,
Yes, sir.
which is daily, twice a day?
It's 2 or 3 times a day,
Thank you.
depending on how many rooms were cleaned and whatnot.
Thank you.
So knowing the length of this space, because it sounds like you need this as I mean, again, I don't know, in general, if I was thinking about a commercial building in Birmingham, one day there could be a different tenant, right?
Correct.
And that tenant might see the value in the loading dock, and the loading dock may function better when the construction across from the hotel is eliminated. And every building at this size needs at least one loading dock, and you're currently blocking the loading dock with garbage cans, and you'd be doing the same with the compactor that would be mounted to something, or would it be just locked into place with wheels? How does that work?
There would be a rail system that it would sit on, and then at the end of the rail system, there'll be blocks so it doesn't roll down all the way per se, right? So it'll stop it from rolling all the way.
Is there a reason why that compactor couldn't be at the bottom of the ramp and use a rail system to move garbage up? Like, why couldn't it still function as a potential loading dock that you're not using as a loading dock now by pushing that compactor further into the bay?
Well, one, when that trash compactor goes in place, there's only going to be about 2 to 3 feet of allowable space to walk by the compactor once it's in place.
Right?
And we're not going to use it anything for other than that. Now, if somebody in the future decides they want to buy the building and they could take the compactor out and they'd have their loading dock back.
So Nick, I guess what I'm asking is how do we not give them a variance to not have a loading dock, allow them to leave a loading dock, but have it be used for trash like it currently is? I just don't understand. I'm personally not comfortable saying you don't need a loading dock, but it currently has garbage cans that don't allow for the loading dock to function, and what they're putting in there could be a temporary structure. Is there a method by which we could approve a blocking of or a existing use without giving a building a permission to eliminate? Because if we give them permission to eliminate it, they could literally fill it in and make it something else. Hold on, I'm asking Nick, and then you can answer.
Sure, and I suppose I'm a little unprepared to answer that question, because I think that now we're getting into the interpretation side of ordinance work. So we've interpreted that this would eliminate the loading space. I guess what I'm hearing you say is you're insinuating that actually it's still there, it's just being used in a different way. So I think that's an interpretation challenge that we might be able to flesh out at some point, because our ordinance requires that you have it, but it doesn't prescribe what you have to do in it. So it's a fair question, I think, that I don't know that I'm prepared to answer real time right now.
Mr. Lee, did you have a comment about that?
Yeah, it's a comment.
Oh, so go ahead.
The loading dock can't be used as a loading dock. You can't get a truck in it. So what difference does it make?
I mean, so before you say that, because again, I don't want you to testify on behalf of what you believe, that's part of our discussion, but the size of the loading dock is based on the ordinance. So if the city wants to change the ordinance for how they function, or if that turning radius currently doesn't allow them to line up a large truck to get down that breezeway, that alleyway, that doesn't mean that it wouldn't be functional or potentially. I mean, the city's picked the size. The size is based on some kind of criteria. We aren't here to reanalyze that. But just because we don't believe it functions for what it could function, doesn't change the ordinance. It's not an old building with an old one. It's a new building with an ordinance that was met in order to have the building.
One quick follow-up question, Mr. Chair. So when you went before the planning commission, they locked you into this, correct? You get to put the loading dock in, you get to put the trash compactor in there, if the variance is granted, but didn't allow any other changes other than the putting the compactor in. Because what I'm driving at, hearing from the other board members is, if you're granted a variance, you're granted a variance to put the trash compactor in and nothing else.
Correct.
No changes. Is that, and my question to you is specifically, is that what the planning commission approved?
Yes, because when we went to them, there was a couple other problems, right? And their problem is, one, we're using the loading dock as all the trash that gets taken in and out of there, all the multiple deliveries. So we tried to get everything to resolve to take care of everybody's issues, if that answers your question. And that's the only thing if we get this granted, that is a condition that's only used for the compactor and nothing else.
That would be my concern. Is,
Yes.
like, look, if the planning commission says you guys are locked into this, that's
it.
That you can't modify it, you can't.
Yeah, I can't add floor space or
And that's
whatever, decide to add offices or whatever.
And that was
later.
clear to you from the planning commission?
yes.
Okay, good, thank you.
And the variance says a dimensional variance of 1 usable off-site loading space is requested. So we're giving a variance that they don't have to have a usable off-site loading space, but to me, that implies that they can use that space however they choose. Could we approve a variance that is specific to that use, but isn't that like I mean, how do you feel about that?
Based on what I understand about the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act and things, you could assign conditions like that to a variance. It's not uncommon. It just has to be obviously relevant to the case and for a purpose.
So one could say, we propose a alternate use for this particular loading dock for the purpose of a trash compactor, but that trash compactor needs to be able to be removed to function as the original ordinance required, no changes of foundation or slope or the opening of the space without additional approval.
To me, that sounds reasonable.
Mike, what do you think?
I agree.
That could be done. All right, any other questions for?
Yeah, I just, and maybe I'm going to ask you to argue against yourself a little bit, but obviously there's a lot to be gained here in terms of laundry and deliveries and everything, but, you know, given the current state of how you use it, what will be lost if this is approved in terms of the utilization of that loading dock? What won't be able to happen that happens now if this is installed?
I guess if we were granted this, you're asking, or saying, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
If we were proposed this and granted this, what would we be losing?
Yeah.
What other functions are lost?
And that's what I'm trying to think. Other than we won't have our utility, our laundry, our in-house laundry, and all the deliveries are still coming as they are.
So they're outside of laundry, it's not used for other deliveries or functions or?
No, if you were to walk by there any time in the past, like you have said, Ben, in the past, there's probably 20 or 30 trash cans in there right now. And it's never been used for delivery since we've been a part of the management anyways.
So, all of the functions that come in, you have ballrooms and everything, and I'm sure you have lots of stuff from users coming in, but you're saying that they really would use the other,
correct, in the service,
the lower delivery, and right now they don't.
No.
They don't use that.
They don't use that at all.
That dock.
And if you're fully booked and there are cars in that loading space, how do I've never been in that space. How do they move around? How would a van be able to maneuver?
So there's an area where you come down the lower level, and it's not a parking space per se. They would just park in front of the service elevator, and they unload in front of the service elevator and go back out and come back out on the old Woodward, yes. So there is no parking spaces or anything that's going to be taken up per se when they unload.
Any other questions for the appellant? Seeing none, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Presentation. In the audience or by Zoom or by phone, anybody not affiliated with this particular appeal that has any comments about this particular? Seeing nothing in the audience or on Zoom, we'll close public comment. Board members, do we have a motion?
I'll take a stab at this, Mr. Chair. With regard to 298 South Woodward, Appeal 25-17, I would move to approve Petition A. I think in this case, there are enough special circumstances that are unique to this particular property, a hotel in a densely urban area, has significant amount of restrictions based on the geography of the streets, the original design of the building, which allows just a relatively small loading ramp off almost a street that eventually becomes residential. I think that there are enough special circumstances here to grant this variance. That being said, the variance itself would have to be tied specifically to what was approved by the Planning Commission. The loading dock would have to be returned, would have to be able to be returned to its original state should the next owner desire to do so, and no additional changes could be made to the loading ramp other than putting in the trash compactor as tied to the specific plans that were presented by the appellant. So I think that literal enforcement of this would result in unnecessary hardship, because clearly the owner of the building now is having to deal with multiple trash and delivery issues, and this trash compactor seems to eliminate some of that. I don't think that granting the variance would be contrary to the spirit and purpose of the zoning ordinance, because in this particular case, we have identified enough unique circumstances that are applicable specifically to this property. So for those reasons, I would move to approve, or I would move to grant the variance to the appellant.
We have a second? Mr. Lilly, thank you. Do we have any comments?
I have a comment, yeah, and I think my concern is what you were getting at in terms of eliminating a loading dock. So let me just throw this out. You know, there's a sentence here: the Daxton Hotel is proposing to eliminate the existing required off-street loading space in favor of a new waste receptacle and other back-of-house needs. I wish that it stated the Daxton Hotel is proposing to modify the existing required off-street loading space in favor of a new waste receptacle. Then we're not talking about eliminating it, we're talking about a modification to the loading space. That wasn't how it was advertised, but obviously it's an easier ask than for elimination. And that word eliminate is what is a concern to me, and I think it was a concern to you, too.
It is, and I think the attempt in the motion was to say, I accept with the condition that it can be returned to the state as needed if it ever had to function as a loading dock again. But I hear the contradiction legally that the request is eliminate, and we're approving, and does the condition contradict the approval? I mean, I see what you're saying. And that's why we're asking, how do we do that? Because I'm not comfortable with saying this building doesn't need a loading dock, and I think that there are conditions right now that are challenging conditions, which one is a large building being built across the street and challenging the function. I'm sure that the angle to approach and the width is all part of an ordinance on how it should function. They can choose not to use it, and code enforcement can come and say you aren't using your loading dock you need to, and your laundry, I'm not saying this is something they need to do, but if it's an issue for where they load laundry and drive by the loading dock and say you can't put 70 garbage cans in your loading dock because it needs to function as a loading dock, that's up to the city to enforce. But I have a challenge with agreeing on a building that's between 5,000 and 20,000 square feet to say they can eliminate it. And I'm not in it. And I've had a lot of appellants say we intend to only have deliveries that will function through this other means of getting in. But the reality is whoever's delivering is going to deliver like they always do. They're going to stop in the middle of the road. They're going to take their banquet tables and they're going to run them across the street. Even if the concept is to suggest that everything will be delivered down a ramp through a garage door where there's valet parking or whatever happens there, that doesn't mean it's a requirement. And so are we creating a challenge? I accept the appellant's argument that it's not currently used that way, but there is a lot of congestion on our streets. Maybe it should be used that way, and maybe it's not being used. So I recognize all those challenges. And so, if the elimination is part of this variance and we don't feel comfortable with the word elimination, then we can reject the motion or reject the appeal and require them to come back and say, here's our alternate. We will just have a temporary structure, or we can rely on the motion, which is what's in front of us right now. We either have to accept, or now that it's been seconded, we either have to vote it in or vote it out, that we aren't giving, we aren't removing a loading dock for a 5,000 or 20,000 square foot building that is required for any other building that is in our city. So I agree with what you're saying. Mr. Hart?
Mr. Chair, I agree. I understand what you're saying too, but like Chapter 127, Article 4 talks about commercial use, and it throws a whole bunch of types of businesses into one group. And in my opinion, that if this changes hands and it becomes heaven forbid, it becomes a Holiday Inn Express in 20 years, they're still not going to, that operation will still not require a 40-foot long semi-unloading vehicle. It's kind of, it works for grocery stores, it works for, some retail places, but this is kind of unique. So I think we're safe in not creating a precedent on another property that would fall under Chapter 127, somewhere between, 5,000 and 20,000 square feet. But this is a unique building, and we don't have a lot of hotels in Birmingham. And I think that if this does change hands, or it becomes,
A Walmart?
Yeah, it does, yeah. It's still not going to require an odd-shaped 40-foot semi-trailer loading and unloading. I don't even know how you'd be able to pull out of that thing and get into the street and make the turn without going up over the sidewalk on the opposite side. I mean, it's a tough, and I know why they don't want to use it, because they probably used it once, and now it's become a skating rink for the guys who need exercise at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
So I think we're safe in assuming that this is a very unique circumstance.
Very good.
I'm going to support the
Someone else over on this side? I thought I saw, no?
motion.
Mr. Conant?
So just to clarify, so the issue is we would like to provide, I'm making assumption, if I was going to vote, I would be happy to vote for a use variance for the loading dock, but not the elimination of the loading dock.
I think that's what the attempt is, to make this into a special circumstance use variance, right?
But because it's legally written down as an elimination, is his clarification and the approval enough, or do we have to?
I don't know. I mean, we don't have any of our attorneys here that are on our board to tell us whether or not, so I don't, Nick, to you.
Yeah, and if I may, just to be careful, I'm unsure if this is what you're saying. We, of course, couldn't change to a literal use variance. That's not how it was advertised. I'm unsure if that's what you're saying, but just for the record, we're not changing this to a use variance here.
It's dimension.
as
Yeah,
part of this.
he's just saying, are we attempting to make a use variance is what he's saying.
I see, yeah.
He's not saying we should change it.
Good.
He's saying, my perception is the motion is an attempt to be a use variance. And that was why he was asking, does it work? Are we allowed to approach it that way?
Yeah, and I guess what I would say, maybe to clarify, maybe not, there is no use category of loading space. In our list of commercial permitted uses or our list of accessory permitted uses, you won't see loading space anywhere on there. Loading spaces are inherently dimensional, which is why they're located further down in the specific standards in Article 4.
In addition to the fact they aren't currently using it for its function regardless, it's currently being used for trash. I personally, because we're having a discussion, I personally don't believe that I've been presented with enough information to know that would this space function better once construction is complete? Would this space be used if they found a different location for the laundry? And I know there's complexity in venting and all that stuff, and that's what happens when you remodel something. Have I been convinced that the only place to put this, laundry where the trash is, trash where the loading dock is? Have I been convinced in such a large building, and has there been evidence presented that this is the only option, is to place this trash compactor in this location? Those are all things that I'm not convinced of. Any other comments about this motion?
Just another thought. And again, I'm hung up on that word eliminate versus modify. if the word was modify, wouldn't the planning board have been able to approve it without having to go through us? If it was just modify, what we're looking at is eliminating a loading dock. The loading dock isn't really being eliminated. I mean, it's still there, but it's being modified. If the word was modify, would the planning board have been able to approve it without coming to this board? Perhaps.
So I guess I would say no again, and we're getting into the ordinance world of arguing intent now. And I guess what we view the intent of that loading ordinance to be is that you supply a loading space for use by trucks for loading and unloading services. What they're proposing, in our opinion, is not an unloading and loading service, it's a trash service. As stated by the applicant, there will be no loading happening in that zone, although the physical space is still there. So although it meets the dimensions, what we view it as now is effectively a trash room. So when we say eliminate, that's what we mean in terms of the space usage, of that area of the building would no longer be loading because this compactor is changing the
Function of the space.
function of the
And
space.
they've already acknowledged you can hardly even squeeze around it when they put it in there. So if you're not comfortable in the motion, then you would choose not to support the motion.
Exactly.
A question for Nick. So currently, they're not using it anyways as a loading dock. So it's the garbage cans in the present state, even if someone wanted to try and park there, they couldn't because it's being blocked. Is that something that anybody could even enforce? The fact that they've blocked it with garbage cans, like it's a violation, or because it's still a loading dock, but they're just stacking garbage cans there. They're loading garbage.
I would much like to confirm with council and my team on that one. I guess at a high level, perhaps, yes.
So we have a motion to, a modified motion to approve with a condition that the space isn't modified, isn't eliminated, but has the trash compactor can function but also be removed. Can we call the roll?
Ron Ready,
Yes.
Carl Kuna,
No.
Carl Kuna,
No.
Donald Rogers,
Yes.
Kevin Hart,
Yes.
Richard Lilly,
Yes.
Don Miller,
No.
Eric Morganoff.
No.
Okay.
Those 4 no's, right?
4 yeses. 4 yeses.
Sorry, I wasn't tracking. Looks like you have your variance.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate your time.
That was a tough one. Yeah, it was a tough one. In the audience or online, does anybody have any business they'd like to discuss with this board that's not affiliated with the 2 appeals? So did you come to watch, or you have any comments about?
I'd like to talk to him once you break.
Oh, very good. Mr. Mora, do we have any other business?
No, we do not.
Very good. We have a motion? Motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? Mr. Kona, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We are adjourned.